The massive warship Eternal Harmony floated in the darkness of space like a silver needle against black cloth. Its hull gleamed under the light of distant stars, and every surface showed the careful work of the galaxy's best engineers. This was not just any ship. This was the pride of the Galactic Council, built to show power and bring peace to the stars. Admiral Hyun-sik stood on the bridge, his tall frame casting a shadow across the control panels. His blue skin marked him as Altarian, one of the oldest races in the Council. Behind him, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. Each alien came from a different world, but they all shared the same goal today. They were waiting for Earth's diplomat to arrive. The peace talks with the Vorthak Empire could not wait any longer. For 6 months, the Vorthak had been attacking outer colonies, burning whole settlements and taking prisoners. Their war fleets moved like hungry wolves through space, striking fast and hard before disappearing again. The Council needed these talks to work. They needed peace. "Admiral," called out Communications Officer Boram, her crystal-like fingers dancing over her console. "We have an incoming message from Earth." Hyun-sik nodded. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, showing a plain room with white walls. A human woman in a dark suit appeared. She looked tired, and her voice was flat when she spoke. "Eternal Harmony, this is Earth Command. We are sending our representative as planned. He will arrive in 3 hours aboard the transport vessel Dancing Bear. Please prepare for docking." Council mediator Ji-won stepped forward from her position near the back of the bridge. Her green skin and large eyes marked her as Zephyrian, a race known for their skill in making peace between enemies. "What is the name of your diplomat?" she asked. "We need to prepare proper quarters." The human woman paused for a moment. "His name is Daeho. He will have everything he needs." The transmission ended before anyone could ask more questions. 3 hours later, the Dancing Bear appeared on their sensors. It was nothing like what the Council expected. Where they thought to see a sleek diplomatic vessel, they saw an old cargo ship. Its hull was marked with scratches and burn marks from countless journeys through dangerous space. One of its engines seemed to be held together with metal patches and "Hope? That cannot be right," muttered Commander Taemin of the Zephyrian Guard, his forearms crossed over his chest as he watched the battered ship approach. "Earth sends this old wreck to the most important peace talks in 50 years. The Dancing Bear docked with a loud clang that shook the entire bay. The sound echoed through the ship's halls like a warning bell. Security teams moved into position, but they were not sure what to expect. The airlock opened with a hiss of escaping air. Out stepped a single human male carrying nothing but a worn green bag over his shoulder. He was not tall, but something about the way he moved made everyone step back. His dark hair was cut short, and his brown eyes swept across the docking bay like he was memorizing every detail. Daeho wore old military clothes that had seen better days. His boots were heavy and made loud sounds on the metal floor as he walked. Scars marked his hands and face, telling stories of fights and hard living. This was not what a diplomat was supposed to look like. Admiral Hyun-sik approached with Ji-won beside him. "Welcome aboard the Eternal Harmony," the Admiral said in the common galactic language. "I am Admiral Hyun-sik, and this is Mediator Ji-won. We were expecting a diplomatic team from Earth." Daeho stopped walking and looked at them both. His face showed no emotion. "You got me instead," he said simply. His voice was quiet but somehow filled the whole docking bay. "Where are my quarters?" Ji-won stepped forward, her large eyes blinking rapidly. This was her job after all. "Sir, we have prepared the diplomatic suite for you, but we need to discuss the peace talks. The Vorthak delegation will arrive in 2 days, and we must prepare our strategy." "I'll need to see the ship first," Daeho said, ignoring her words about strategy. "Security systems, weapon placements, escape routes, the usual stuff." Commander Taemin's forearms uncrossed. "Those areas are restricted to diplomatic guests. You do not have clearance." Daeho turned to look at the commander. His brown eyes were calm, but something dangerous lurked behind them. "Then get me clearance." "That is not how things work here," Taemin replied, his voice getting louder. "This is a council vessel and we have rules." "Rules are good," Daeho said, hefting his bag higher on his shoulder. "They keep honest people honest. But the Vorthak don't follow rules, do they?" Admiral Hyun-sik felt a chill run down his spine. There was something about this human that felt wrong. He did not act like any diplomat the Admiral had ever met. "What exactly is your role in these negotiations, Mr. Daeho?" Daeho smiled for the first time since stepping off his ship. It was not a friendly smile. I'm here to make sure everyone goes home when this is over. That is what we all want, Jiwan said carefully. Peace benefits everyone. Peace. Daeho repeated the word like he was tasting something bitter. Yeah, peace is good, but sometimes you have to fight for it first. He started walking toward the exit of the docking bay. The security teams moved to follow him, but Admiral Hyun-sik waved them back. Something told him that following this human too closely might not be wise. Your quarters are on deck 7, the Admiral called after him. Daeho raised one hand without turning around. Thanks. I'll find them. As the human disappeared into the ship's corridors, the alien delegates looked at each other with growing concern. This was not what Earth had promised them. They had asked for a skilled negotiator, someone who could find middle ground with the Vorthak Empire. Instead, they had received a scarred warrior who spoke of fighting. Contact Earth Command, Admiral Hyun-sik ordered quietly. I want to know exactly who they sent us. But deep in the ship's computer systems, all records of Daeho's true identity were locked behind codes that would take days to break. Earth had sent them exactly what they needed, but not what they expected. The real question was whether the Galactic Council would understand the difference before it was too late. The Eternal Harmony continued its journey through space, carrying its unexpected passenger toward a meeting that would change everything. In his quarters, Daeho unpacked his bag and began to plan. The Vorthak thought they were coming to a surrender ceremony. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. The Eternal Harmony moved through space like a silent giant, its engines humming softly as it carried its passengers toward their destination. 3 days had passed since Daeho arrived, and the ship's crew was beginning to notice strange things. Chief Engineer Minho was the first to spot the human in places where he should not be. Minho belonged to the Crystalline Consortium, a race of beings whose bodies looked like living gems. His job was to keep the ship running, and he knew every inch of its corridors and rooms. On the second day, Minho found Daeho in the lower engine room, standing near the main power core. The human was just looking around like a tourist seeing the sights. Excuse me? Minho said, his voice ringing like tiny bells. This area is off limits to passengers. Daeho turned around slowly. He did not look surprised to be caught. Nice setup you have here, he said, pointing at the glowing power core. Altarian design, right? Very clean, very efficient. Yes, but you should not be here, Minho replied. How did you even get past the security doors? Daeho shrugged. I asked nicely. That was clearly not true. The security doors needed special codes to open, codes that only senior crew members had. But before Minho could ask more questions, Daeho was already walking away. The next day, Security Chief Wonbin found the human in the weapon control room. Wonbin was a large, muscular alien with gray skin and 6 eyes. His job was to keep the ship safe, and finding unauthorized people in restricted areas made him very angry. Stop right there, Wonbin ordered, his hand moving to his weapon. Daeho stopped and raised his hands, but he did not look worried. Just admiring the hardware, he said. These plasma cannons are impressive. Consortium tech, right? Good range, good power. How do you know about our weapons? Wonbin demanded. I read a lot, Daeho said simply. Wonbin escorted the human back to the passenger areas, but he noticed something troubling. As they walked, Daeho's eyes never stopped moving. He looked at every door, every security camera, every crew member they passed. He was memorizing everything. By the 3rd day, reports about the strange human were reaching Admiral Hyun-sik's desk. Crew members had spotted Daeho in maintenance tunnels near communication arrays, and even in the ship's food storage areas. Each time he had a reasonable explanation for being there. Each time he left before anyone could ask detailed questions. That evening, the senior staff gathered for dinner in the main dining hall. It was meant to be a formal meal to discuss the upcoming peace talks. All the important delegates were there. Admiral Hyun-sik, Mediator Ji-won, Commander Tai-min, and representatives from 6 different worlds. Daeho arrived exactly on time, wearing the same old military clothes he had worn since coming aboard. He sat at the end of the long table and listened quietly, as the others talked about strategy and diplomacy. The Vorthak are proud warriors, explained Ambassador Kyung-ho from the Stellar Federation. We must appeal to their sense of honor. Their sense of honor involves burning colonies, replied Delegate So Young from the Peaceful Worlds Alliance. Her long blue hair shimmered as she shook her head. We need to show strength, not weakness. As the debate continued, Daeho began to speak. His voice was quiet, but somehow everyone stopped talking to listen. Ambassador Kyung-ho, he said, looking at the tall, thin alien. Your homeworld is Kepler 442b, right? Nice planet. I hear the crystal mines there produce the best energy cells in the galaxy. Kyung-ho looked surprised. Yes, but how do you know that? Daeho turned to look at Delegate So Young. And your world has those beautiful floating cities. Shame about the defense grid being down for maintenance last month. So Young's face went pale. That information is classified. Commander Tae-min, Daeho continued, his eyes moving to the four-armed alien. The Zephyrian Guard is famous throughout the galaxy. Your military academy on Zephyr Prime trains the best peacekeepers in known space. Taemin's four hands clenched into fists. What are you trying to say, human? Daeho leaned back in his chair and smiled that cold smile again. I'm saying I do my homework. The table fell silent. Admiral Hyun-sik felt that same chill he had experienced in the docking bay. Where did you get this information? Public records, Daeho said. Trade reports, news broadcasts, military journals. Amazing what people leave lying around in open databases. But everyone at the table knew that was not the whole truth. Some of the information Daeho had mentioned was supposed to be secret. The fact that he knew about the defense grid maintenance was especially troubling. After dinner, Admiral Hyun-sik asked Daeho to stay behind. When the dining hall was empty except for the two of them, the Admiral sat down across from the human. What are you really doing on my ship? Hyun-sik asked. Daeho was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke in a voice that was even more serious than before. Your ship is beautiful, Admiral. Clean lines, advanced technology, comfortable quarters. It's perfect for showing off the Council's power. That is the point, Hyun-sik replied. But it's not built for war, Daeho continued. Your weapon systems are strong, but they're designed to fight other ships in open space. Your security is good, but it's meant to stop thieves and criminals, not soldiers. Your crew is skilled, but they're peacekeepers, not warriors. The Admiral felt a cold weight settling in his stomach. What are you saying? Daeho stood up and walked to the large window that looked out into space. Stars moved slowly past as the ship continued its journey. The Vorthak aren't coming to these talks to make peace, Admiral. They're coming to finish what they started. You do not know that, Hyun-sik said, but his voice lacked confidence. I know warriors, Daeho replied without turning around. I know how they think, how they plan, how they fight. The Vorthak have been winning for months. Why would they want peace now? Why would they agree to meet on a neutral station? The Admiral did not have a good answer for that question. They're coming because they see a chance to end this war with one big victory, Daeho said. They're going to try to capture or kill every council leader in one place. After that, the rest of the galaxy will be too scared to fight back. Hyun-sik stood up as well, his blue face darker than usual. If you believe this, then why did Earth send only you? Why not warn us properly? Daeho finally turned around. In the starlight from the window, his scarred face looked even more dangerous. Because warnings don't stop warriors, Admiral. Only strength stops warriors. Are you saying Earth wants this war to continue? I'm saying Earth wants it to end, Daeho replied. But we want it to end the right way. Over the next 2 days, Daeho continued his quiet exploration of the ship. But now the crew members who spotted him began to notice something else. He was not just looking around anymore. He was making small changes. Minho found extra power cables running through the engine room. One bin discovered that some of the security cameras had been adjusted to cover different angles. The ship's doctor, Yoon-ji, noticed that several medical supplies were missing from storage. When the crew reported these discoveries, Admiral Hyun-sik realized what was happening. The human was not just studying the ship. He was preparing it for something. The question was, preparing it for what? The answer would come soon enough. In just a few hours, they would reach the meeting point where the Vorthak delegation was waiting. And then everyone would learn exactly why Earth had sent a dangerous man instead of a peaceful diplomat. As the Eternal Harmony approached its destination, Daeho sat in his quarters and checked his equipment one final time. The real test was about to begin. The peace station hung in space like a giant metal flower, its arms reaching out toward the approaching ships. It was neutral ground, built by the Council for meetings between enemies. Today it would host the most important talks in 50 years. Admiral Hyun-sik stood on the bridge of the Eternal Harmony. watching as more ships arrived at the station. The Council fleet looked impressive. 12 vessels from different worlds, each one showing the peaceful cooperation that made the galaxy strong. Then the Vorthak arrived. Their ships came out of hyperspace like hungry sharks, black and sharp against the stars. The lead vessel was enormous, twice the size of the Eternal Harmony. Its hull was covered with weapon ports and armor plating. This was the Bloodfang flagship of War Chieftain Kang Ho. "Admiral," Communications Officer Bo-Ram called out, her crystal fingers shaking slightly. "I count 37 Vorthak vessels." Hyun-Sik felt his stomach drop. 37? The agreement was for no more than 5 escort ships. On the main screen, a massive Vorthak appeared. He was nearly 3 meters tall, with gray skin covered in ritual scars. His red eyes glowed with cruel intelligence, and his mouth was full of sharp teeth. When he spoke, his voice sounded like grinding metal. "I am War Chieftain Kang Ho of the Vorthak Empire," he announced. "We come to accept your surrender." "Surrender?" Mediator Ji-Won stepped forward, her green face showing confusion. "These are peace talks. We are here to negotiate an end to the fighting." Kang Ho laughed, a sound like rocks falling down a mountain. "The fighting is already over. You just do not know it yet." The transmission ended, leaving the council delegates staring at each other in shock. Around the peace station, the Vorthak fleet spread out in a perfect attack formation. They had not come to talk. They had come to finish the war. Admiral Hyun-Sik immediately called an emergency meeting. In the conference room, all the senior staff gathered around the table. Everyone was talking at once, their voices filled with fear and anger. "This is a trap," Commander Taemin said, his forearms waving in frustration. "We should leave immediately." "We cannot leave," Ambassador Kyung-ho replied. "If we run now, the Vorthak will attack every council world. This might be our only chance for peace." "Peace?" Delegate So-Young's blue hair was almost standing on end with static electricity. "Did you not hear what he said? They want us to surrender." As the argument continued, Dae-ho sat quietly at the end of the table. He had not said a word since entering the room. His brown eyes moved from speaker to speaker, but his face showed no emotion. Finally, Admiral Hyun-Sik noticed the human's silence. "What do you think we should do, Mr. Dae-ho?" All eyes turned to the scarred man in worn military clothes. Dae-ho was quiet for a long moment, then he spoke in his calm, dangerous voice. "We go to the meeting." "Are you insane?" Taemin demanded. "It is obviously a trap." "Of course it's a trap," Dae-ho replied. "That's why we're going." Before anyone could ask what he meant, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and the voice of Security Chief Won Bin echoed from the speakers. "All hands to battle stations. Vorthak boarding parties detected on the peace station." Through the conference room windows, they could see explosions blooming on the station's surface. Small Vorthak ships were attaching themselves to the station like parasites, cutting through the hull with plasma torches. "They're not waiting for the meeting," Admiral Hyun-Sik realized. "They're attacking now." More alarms sounded as Vorthak ships began approaching the council vessels. The trap was closing, and there was nowhere to run. Dae-ho stood up calmly and walked to the window. Outside, he could see Vorthak soldiers pouring into the peace station through the holes they had cut. The plan was simple and brutal. Capture the station, kill the council leaders, and broadcast the victory to the entire galaxy. "Admiral," Dae-ho said without turning around, "I need you to order all council ships to dock with the station immediately." "That would be suicide," Hyun-Sik replied. "The Vorthak will capture them all." "No," Dae-ho said, finally turning to face the room. "The Vorthak will try to capture them all." "There's a difference." Something in his voice made everyone stop arguing. For the first time since arriving on the ship, Dae-ho looked like what he really was, a predator preparing to hunt. "What do you need us to do?" the Admiral asked quietly. Dae-ho smiled his cold smile. "Get me to that station. Then stay out of my way." 30 minutes later, the Eternal Harmony docked with the peace station along with the other council vessels. The Vorthak had been expecting this. Their warriors were waiting in the docking bays, weapons ready. But as the council delegates prepared to surrender, Dae-ho was already moving. He had spent days preparing the Eternal Harmony for this moment. The extra power cables Minho had found were connected to improvised weapons. The adjusted security cameras Wonbin had discovered were now showing him every Vorthak position. The missing medical supplies had been turned into explosive devices. As Vorthak soldiers stormed through the ship's corridors, They found themselves walking into carefully prepared death traps. Doors that should have opened normally exploded instead. Corridors that looked safe became killing fields. The peaceful diplomatic vessel had been turned into a fortress. In the chaos, Daeho moved like a ghost. He appeared behind enemy lines, eliminated key targets, and vanished before anyone could react. The Vorthak, who had built their reputation on overwhelming force and brutal tactics, found themselves fighting an enemy they could not see or predict. War Chieftain Kang Ho, commanding the assault from his flagship, watched in growing anger as his casualty reports climbed higher. His warriors were the best in the galaxy, trained from birth to fight and kill. But they were being defeated by a single human. Find him! Kang Ho roared at his commanders. Find this human and bring me his head. But finding Daeho was easier said than done. He knew the ship better than the Vorthak did, and he had spent days preparing for exactly this situation. Every corridor was a potential ambush site. Every room could hide a trap. On the bridge of the Eternal Harmony, Admiral Hyun-sik and his crew watched in amazement as their ship became a battlefield. Through the security monitors, they could see Vorthak soldiers falling back in confusion and fear. How is he doing this? Mediator Jiwon whispered. He is just one person. Chief Engineer Min-ho checked his instruments and shook his crystalline head in disbelief. He has turned our own ship against them. The power grid, the life support systems, even the artificial gravity, everything has been weaponized. As the battle raged on, something strange began to happen. The Vorthak, who had entered the ship with confidence and bloodlust, started to show signs of fear. They had never faced an enemy like this before. Their own tactics, surprise, overwhelming force, and psychological terror, were being used against them. In the depths of the ship, Daeho spoke into a communication device he had built from spare parts. His voice echoed through the Vorthak command channels, calm and deadly. War Chieftain Kang Ho, he said, "This is the human you're looking for. I have a message for you and your warriors." The Vorthak channels fell silent as every soldier stopped to listen. "You came here expecting easy prey." Daeho continued. "You thought the council would surrender without a fight. You were wrong." Explosions echoed through the ship as more Vorthak soldiers triggered the traps he had prepared. "This is what humans do," Daeho said. "We don't just fight wars. We end them. And when someone threatens our allies, we make sure they remember why that was a mistake." The psychological impact of his words spread through the Vorthak ranks like a virus. These were warriors who had never known defeat, but now they were being hunted by a single human who seemed to be everywhere at once. War Chieftain Kang Ho realized that his perfect trap had become a nightmare. The easy victory he had planned was turning into a costly defeat. But retreat was not in the Vorthak nature. He would have to escalate the battle, even if it meant losing more ships. The real war was just beginning. The battle had been raging for 3 hours, and the Vorthak were learning that capturing the peace station was not as simple as they had planned. What should have been a quick victory was becoming a nightmare of ambushes and traps. War Chieftain Kang Ho stood in the command center of his flagship, watching the casualty reports climb higher with each passing minute. His red eyes burned with rage as he listened to the panicked voices of his commanders. "Section 7 is lost, War Chieftain," reported Commander Baksu over the communication channel. "The human has sealed the corridors and filled them with poisonous gas. Section 12 is also compromised," added another voice. "Our warriors report that the walls themselves are attacking them." Kang Ho slammed his massive fist against the control panel, leaving a dent in the metal. "It is one human. One single human against 3,000 Vorthak warriors. How is this possible?" But even as he spoke, he knew the answer was more complicated than simple numbers. This human fought differently than any enemy the Vorthak had ever faced. He did not meet them in open battle where their superior strength and numbers would matter. Instead, he turned their own advantages against them. On the Eternal Harmony, Medical Officer Yoon-ji was treating wounded crew members when she heard the sound of combat approaching her medical bay. She pressed herself against the wall and watched through a crack in the door as Vorthak soldiers moved down the corridor. They were not moving like the confident warriors who had first boarded the ship. These soldiers looked over their shoulders constantly, jumped at every sound, and held their weapons with shaking hands. They had been fighting an invisible enemy for hours, and the stress was breaking their minds. Suddenly, the lights in the corridor went out. In the darkness, Yoon-ji heard the sound of combat. brief, violent, and one-sided. When the lights came back on, the Vorthak soldiers were gone. In their place stood Daeho, his military clothes torn and bloodied, but his brown eyes still calm and focused. "Doctor," he said quietly, "I need medical supplies, the fast-acting kind." Yunji stared at him in shock. "What are you doing to them?" "What needs to be done?" Daeho replied, gathering bottles and equipment from her medical cabinet. "The Vorthak understand strength and fear, so I'm teaching them both." As he prepared to leave, Eunji grabbed his arm. "This is not warfare," she said. "This is something else." Daeho looked at her with eyes that had seen too much death and violence. "No, doctor. This is exactly what warfare looks like when someone refuses to fight fair." He disappeared back into the ship's corridors, leaving Yunji to wonder what kind of creature Earth had sent them. In another part of the ship, Daeho had set up what he called his classroom. He had captured 5 Vorthak soldiers and tied them to chairs in one of the ship's meeting rooms. They were some of Kang Ho's best warriors, but now they looked at the human with pure terror. "Lesson 1, Daeho said, activating a wall screen. Human military history. Images flashed across the screen. Ancient battles, modern wars, acts of heroism and sacrifice that had shaped human civilization. The Vorthak watched in growing horror as they saw how humans fought when their backs were against the wall. "This is the siege of Stalingrad," Daeho explained, showing images of ruined buildings and desperate soldiers. One human city held against an entire army for months. When they ran out of bullets, they used rocks. When they ran out of rocks, they used their bare hands. More images followed. Soldiers crossing freezing rivers, pilots flying damaged planes into enemy ships, entire populations choosing death over surrender. "This is what humans do," Daeho continued. "We don't just fight to win. We fight to make sure our enemies never want to fight us again." One of the captured Vorthak, a young soldier named Dongwu, spoke up with a trembling voice. "But why show us this? What do you want?" Daeho turned off the screen and looked at each prisoner in turn. "I want you to understand something very important. The Council thinks this war is about territory or resources, but it's not. It's about whether the galaxy will be ruled by strength or by law." He walked over to the communication panel and opened a channel to the Vorthak command frequency. "War Chieftain Kang Ho," he said, "I have some of your warriors here. They've been learning about human history. Would you like to speak with them?" The response came immediately, filled with rage and hatred. "Human, I will tear you apart with my bare hands." "Maybe," Daeho replied calmly. "But first listen to what your soldiers have to say." He gestured to the young Vorthak soldier. "Tell your war chieftain what you learned, Dongwu." The soldier looked at his fellow prisoners, then spoke into the communication device. "War chieftain, the humans. They do not fight like us. They do not fight for glory or conquest. They fight to survive, and they will do anything to win." "What are you saying?" Kang Ho demanded. "I am saying we cannot defeat them," Dongwu replied. "Not because they are stronger than us, but because they will never stop fighting. Even if we kill 1,000,000 of them, the survivors will keep coming. Even if we destroy their worlds, they will find new ones. Even if we hunt them to the ends of the galaxy, they will turn around and hunt us back." Kang Ho's voice became very quiet, which was more frightening than his rage. "You sound like a coward, Dongwu." "I sound like a warrior who wants to live," the young soldier replied. "This human has shown me videos of their wars. They have fought enemies stronger than themselves and won. They have faced impossible odds and survived. They do not surrender, War Chieftain. Ever." Through the ship's corridors, Daeho could hear the sound of fighting growing quieter. The Vorthak advance was slowing down as word spread through their ranks about the humans' tactics. Fear was a powerful weapon, and Daeho was using it like a master craftsman. But the psychological warfare was only part of his strategy. While the Vorthak were distracted by fear and confusion, Daeho was preparing his final surprise. He had spent the last hour moving through the ship's maintenance tunnels, placing small explosive devices at key structural points. The Eternal Harmony was a strong ship, but every vessel had weak spots if you knew where to look. More importantly, he had managed to access the docking systems that connected the ship to the peace station. With a few modifications to the computer codes, he could control not just his own ship, but any vessel that was currently docked. That included several Vorthak ships. As the battle continued to rage, Daeho activated his communication device one final time. This message was not just for War Chieftain Kang Ho, but for every Vorthak warrior in the fleet. This is the human. His voice echoed through every ship and every corridor. I want all Vorthak forces to listen carefully to what I'm about to say. The fighting stopped as soldiers on both sides paused to hear his words. You came here expecting easy prey, Daeho continued. You thought you would capture some diplomats, make some threats, and watch the galaxy surrender to your empire. But you made a mistake. His voice grew harder, filled with the iron of a warrior who had never learned to back down. You forgot that humans are part of this galaxy too, and humans have a simple rule. If you threaten our friends, you become our enemy. If you become our enemy, we will hunt you across every star system until you either surrender or die. Through the security cameras, Admiral Hyun-sik watched as Vorthak soldiers throughout the ship began to look at each other with uncertainty. The confidence that had carried them into battle was cracking. War Chieftain Kang-ho, Daeho said, you have two choices. You can order your forces to retreat and never threaten Council space again, or you can continue this fight and learn exactly why every species in the galaxy fears human warfare. The communication channel was silent for a long moment. Then Kang-ho's voice returned, but it no longer carried the same certainty as before. You are still just one human creature. My fleet can destroy this entire station. Yes, Daeho agreed, but I'm not the only human in the galaxy. And if you kill me here, my people will make sure everyone knows what you did. They will hunt your empire until nothing remains but stories told to frighten children. The truth of his words hung in the air like a physical weight. The Vorthak had built their empire on fear and strength, but they had never faced an enemy that simply refused to be afraid. War Chieftain Kang-ho was about to learn that some battles could not be won with weapons alone. War Chieftain Kang-ho stood alone in his command center, staring at the tactical display that showed his fleet positions around the peace station. The numbers told a story he did not want to believe. In 6 hours of fighting, his forces had lost over 800 warriors to a single human. 800 of his best soldiers defeated by one scarred man in old military clothes. The silence on the command deck was broken only by the steady beeping of status reports from his damaged ships. Many of his commanders were dead, killed in ambushes they never saw coming. Others had stopped reporting altogether, too afraid to admit their failures. War Chieftain, came a hesitant voice from Communications Officer Shung-ho. The human is requesting to speak with you directly. Kang-ho's red eyes burned with hatred, but beneath the rage was something new, uncertainty. He had built his reputation on decisive victories and overwhelming force. This battle was teaching him that some enemies could not be defeated by traditional means. Put him through, Kang-ho growled. The main screen activated, showing the interior of the Eternal Harmonies bridge. Admiral Hyun-sik and his crew were visible in the background, but the focus was on the human standing in the center. Daeho looked tired. His clothes were torn and bloody, and fresh cuts marked his face, but his brown eyes were still calm and dangerous. War Chieftain, Daeho said simply. Are you ready to discuss terms? Terms? Kang-ho's voice shook with rage. You dare speak of terms? You are one human against my entire fleet. That's true, Daeho agreed. But your entire fleet is not doing very well against one human, is it? The truth of those words hit Kang-ho like a physical blow. Around the peace station, his ships were reporting system failures, boarding party casualties, and equipment malfunctions. The easy victory he had planned was becoming a catastrophic defeat. What do you want? Kang-ho asked through clenched teeth. Daeho moved to a control panel and pressed several buttons. On screens throughout the Vorthak fleet, images began to appear. They showed the interior corridors of several Vorthak ships filled with small explosive devices. I want you to understand something very important, Daeho said. While your warriors were busy fighting me on this ship, I was busy visiting your ships through the docking connections. Kang-ho's eyes widened as he realized what he was seeing. The human had somehow moved through the connected vessels and planted explosives throughout his fleet. Impossible, the war chieftain whispered. My ships have security systems, guard, sensor. Yes, they do, Daeho replied. But security systems are designed to keep out enemies, not ghosts. And that's what humans become when we're fighting for our lives. On the screen, the images changed to show more explosive devices, carefully placed at critical systems throughout the Vorthak vessels. Engine rooms, weapon controls, life support systems, all of them were rigged to explode. How? Kang-ho demanded. Trade secret, Daeho said with his cold smile. But I will tell you this. While your warriors were learning to be afraid of human warfare, I was making sure they had good reason to be afraid. Admiral Hyun-sik stepped forward on the screen. Even though he was an ally, he looked at Dae-ho with a mixture of admiration and horror. War Chieftain Kang-ho, the admiral said, I suggest you listen to what the human is telling you. Kang-ho looked around his command center at the faces of his remaining officers. They were all watching him, waiting for his decision. The proud Vorthak Empire had never retreated from a battle, never shown weakness to an enemy. But they had also never faced an enemy like this. What are your terms? Kang-ho asked quietly. Dae-ho was silent for a moment, as if considering his words carefully. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. First, your fleet will withdraw from Council space immediately. Not tomorrow, not next week. Now. Kang-ho's fist clenched, but he nodded. Second, the Vorthak Empire will cease all attacks on Council worlds and colonies. Any Vorthak ship found in Council space will be considered an act of war. And third? Kang-ho asked. Third, Dae-ho said, his voice becoming even more serious. You will spread the word throughout your empire about what happened here today. You will tell them that humans are under the protection of the Galactic Council, and that attacking human allies is the same as attacking Earth itself. You want us to advertise our defeat? Kang-ho asked in disbelief. I want you to advertise the cost of making humans angry, Dae-ho replied, because this is just one human war chieftain. Earth has millions of us and we're all very good at holding grudges. The implications of that statement hung in the air like a threat. The Vorthak had built their empire by conquering weaker species, but humans were clearly not weak. They were something much more dangerous. They were unpredictable. And if I refuse? Kang-ho asked. Dae-ho pressed another button on his control panel. Throughout the Vorthak fleet, warning alarms began to sound as the explosive devices activated their countdown. Timers, then you can explain to your empire how their greatest war chieftain lost an entire fleet to one human with a bag of tricks, Dae-ho said calmly. Kang-ho looked at the tactical display showing his fleet. 37 ships, each one carrying hundreds of warriors, all of them now at the mercy of explosive devices planted by a single enemy. It was the most humiliating moment in Vorthak history, but it was also a lesson in human warfare that he would never forget. I accept your terms, Kang-ho said, the words tasting like poison in his mouth. Good, Dae-ho replied. He pressed more buttons and the countdown timers stopped. The explosives are now disarmed. Your ships are free to leave. As the Vorthak fleet began to move away from the peace station, Kang-ho made one final transmission. Human, he said, what is your name? I want to know the name of the warrior who defeated the Vorthak Empire. Dae-ho looked directly into the camera, his scarred face showing no emotion. My name is Dae-ho, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that I'm human, and humans protect their friends. The transmission ended, leaving the peace station in an eerie quiet. Around the docking bays, Council crew members emerged from their hiding places to survey the damage. The Vorthak were gone, but the evidence of the battle remained. Scorched walls, broken equipment, and the bodies of warriors who had learned too late what human warfare really meant. In the medical bay of the Eternal Harmony, Dr. Yoonji was treating the wounded when Dae-ho appeared in her doorway. He moved slowly, favoring his left leg, and she could see that he was in pain. Doctor, he said quietly, I could use some help. As she treated his wounds, Yoonji found herself asking the question that had been troubling her since the battle began. How did you know? She asked. How did you know the Vorthak would attack? Dae-ho was quiet for a long moment, staring at the ceiling. Because I've seen wars before, Doctor. Real wars. Not the clean little conflicts the Council usually deals with. And in real wars, the side that wants peace is always at a disadvantage against the side that wants blood. So Earth sent you instead of a diplomat because they knew this would happen? Earth sent me because diplomacy only works when both sides want peace, Dae-ho replied. When one side wants war, you need someone who can speak their language. And their language is violence? Their language is strength, Dae-ho corrected. Violence is just how strength is measured in their culture. 3 days later, the Eternal Harmony was returning to Council space when Admiral Hyun-sik received a message from Earth Command. It was the same human woman who had first announced Dae-ho's arrival, but this time she looked more relaxed. Admiral Hyun-sik, she said, Earth Command would like to thank you for your cooperation in this matter. Our representative will be returning home shortly. Wait, the Admiral replied. I need to ask about Mr. Deho. Who is he really? The woman smiled for the first time since their conversations began. He's exactly what we told you he was, Admiral. He's our representative, but perhaps we should have been more specific about what kind of representative Earth sends when talking doesn't work. As the message ended, Admiral Hyun-sik realized that this entire incident had been a message from Earth to the galaxy. Not a message of aggression, but a message of capability. The humans were peaceful by choice, not by weakness. In his quarters, Deho packed his worn green bag and prepared for the journey home. The dancing bear was still docked with the Eternal Harmony, still looking like a battered cargo ship that had seen better days. But as he walked through the corridors of the Council flagship, crew members stepped aside and nodded respectfully. Word had spread throughout the ship about what one human had accomplished against impossible odds. As the dancing bear departed for Earth, Admiral Hyun-sik stood on his bridge and watched it disappear into hyperspace. The battered little ship carried with it a scarred human who had changed everything. Throughout the galaxy, the story of the Peace Station battle began to spread. Vorthak survivors told their people about the human who fought like a ghost and struck like lightning. Council worlds shared the tale of Earth's dangerous representative who had saved them all. And on distant worlds, other species began to look at humanity with new eyes. They were not the strongest race in the galaxy, nor the most advanced. But they were something that might be even more valuable. They were reliable allies and dangerous enemies.